Hey everybody, Alex Kazor, SteelersDepot.com, back with another Pittsburgh Steelers mock draft, my second of draft season. Did my first just about a month ago, and so before free agency begins in roughly 2 weeks or so, I wanted to do another mock draft with some updated, ways of looking at the Steelers situation. And now that we've learned a little bit more about this team, not a lot, but a little bit more since our last mock draft, it was worth revisiting. I will have a link in the description of this video to the text version of my mock draft up on SteelersDepot.com. You can also see what other players I considered at each slot to get a little bit better, complete idea of the direction I was taking this mock draft. All right, diving right into our mock draft at number 24 overall, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers taking Najee Harris, the running back out of Alabama, a very popular name. He'll be mocked to the Steelers quite a bit from now until the end of April, I imagine. I'm not saying that I would necessarily take a running back here in the first round. Obviously, I understand the argument against taking a running back in the first round and how that isn't maybe the best return on investment. But I think there's two things to consider here. A, I think Harris is a really good prospect, a really talented back, and so you want to acquire talented players in the draft. Obviously, guys you think will be a success in the NFL, and then B, and more importantly, I think it's a direction the Steelers could and possibly would go if Harris is available at number 24. It seems like they're a little bit more comfortable with their tackle situation than I personally am. If they re-sign Zach Banner, which feels almost a certainty at this point, I think maybe they're going to wait on an offensive tackle into even day three potentially, and so that really means there's two areas to upgrade this team immediately to fix the running game, which is no doubt the Steelers' primary mission this offseason and specifically through the draft will be improving the 32nd ranked run game of 2020. And so you do that through either drafting a center to replace Marquise Pouncey or a running back to replace James Conner and just get a different lead back there. And so I think it will be Najee Harris who to me compares very favorably to Le'Veon Bell in terms of size, power, sneaky athleticism. They even are both great hurdlers. Bell's vision, I think, overall was a little bit better, a little bit different. He had that just extreme patience that Harris doesn't have, but Harris still has good vision overall. And Harris is a great receiver out of the backfield too. He has wide receiver hands. He can block. Highly productive. All the things the Steelers covet Harris has. So you can certainly argue this is the wrong pick, and I would even potentially agree with you. It depends on how the board goes and things like that. When we're talking reality, would I actually take a running back at 24? But from the Steelers' standpoint, they're going to improve the run game. I don't think, as we sit here today, tackle is going to be at the top of their list. That leaves center, and if you eliminate center from that because there isn't a talent you like quite enough, that really leaves you with Najee Harris if he falls to number 24. So that's my pick here for the Pittsburgh Steelers in round number one. Coming in round number two at number 55 overall, the only holdover from my first mock draft is Trey Hill, the center out of Georgia. I had him in the third round on my previous mock, bumping him up to the second in this one. And again, it goes to the mantra of, you take a center in the first, you'll take a running back in the second. You take a running back in the first, you'll take a center in the second, provided that name, there's a name of value at that spot. And for me, Hill, the same reasons in the first video that I mentioned. A big dude, 6'4", 330, rare size for an NFL center. Started his Georgia career at right guard, then kicked to center, and has played the majority of his time at the pivot. A really strong run blocker, a nasty guy, a mauler, finishes his blocks, but also a decent athlete. Not a great, tremendous A-plus type athlete, but somebody that can pull and function in space with some of the pin pull stuff the Steelers do. I think they can still keep that in their playbook with Trey Hill at center. So a little bit of injury concerns with him. Had surgeries on both his knees at the end of this past season, but they seem to be minor in nature overall. And he kind of has that combination of youthfulness, declaring as a true junior this past year, but also experienced 26 starts for the Bulldogs. And this could be a plug and play starter in replacing Marquise Pouncey because J.C. Hassenauer is not that guy, and there is no other really center option internally on this roster. So I think this team will still address center in free agency with some sort of veteran type guy, maybe bringing back BJ Finney, but they'll also hit it pretty early, I think, in the draft. Round number three, 88 overall, going defense this time with Joe Tryon, the edge pass rusher out of Washington, 6'5", 262. And with Tryon, the Steelers typically like having bigger edge rushers, whether you're talking TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, who was a little bit on the smaller side but played bigger, really tough dude. Bud Dupree, all guys that were 250 plus, pretty big, pretty long. and Tryon fits that bill again, 6'5", 262. Now he does have to get stronger and better versus the run, but there's a frame there to work with. And then from a positional value, there is no edge depth right now. Assuming Bud Dupree leaves, which is a very safe bet at this point. You have Alex Highsmith replacing him at right outside linebacker. You have TJ Watt, of course, on the left side, but there's really nothing behind those guys that you can count on for a rotational role, and certainly no one to count on if Highsmith or Watt were to go down. So having that edge depth is really important for this team to protect yourself versus injury and just in-game rotation, keeping some guys fresh, especially Highsmith, but also, of course, TJ Watt. And so I think you saw the benefit of drafting an edge rusher in the third round last year with Alex Highsmith. That came in really handy, especially post Dupree's injury. And so you'll see that again this year. So the starters here are fine. This isn't for Tryon to take over Highsmith's spot. He's going to be the starting right outside linebacker. Highsmith is for week one, but depth here is really critical. Having competent depth is really important. And so Tryon our pick in round number 3. Round number 4, number 119 overall, going wide receiver with Amari Rogers out of Clemson. Did not have a receiver in my first mock draft, and so we're going to address that in this one. Certainly, receiver becomes a slam dunk selection to be picked if Juju Smith-Schuster signs elsewhere in free agency. Even if he comes back, you'll probably still see a receiver taken at some point, although maybe not this high. But if Juju's gone, then Rogers I think is a great slot replacement. Now he's not as tall and quite as big as Juju. Rogers is only 5'9" and a half, 211 pounds, but he's a pretty stocky, well built guy. That's a tough, physical, slot receiver, good route runner, good after the catch, really productive in 2020, kind of a breakout season, and took over as one of the top guys in that offense that can even be used in the return game a little bit, in jet plays and things like that. So I think he could be a potential plug and play slot receiver for a team who doesn't have a lot of great options if Juju walks. I think Claypool would play more in the slot. You kind of mix and match and get Deontay a little bit in the slot more. Same with James Washington, maybe even playing Eric Ebron in a more stand up role in a true kind of slot sense. But Rogers I think would be a great selection. And also from a feel good standpoint, Rodgers is the son of T. Martin, the former Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback for a brief time. So there's kind of a fun off field connection to talk about as well. Round 4 with the Steelers' projected comp pick. I'm just projecting a fourth round comp pick right now. They could get a sixth in addition to this, but that's a little less certain. So right now I'll just stick with the fourth round comp because that feels the most safe thing to do. I have them taking cornerback Cameron Bynum out of Cal, just over 6'4", 200 pounds. Length isn't great for his size. I think it's 31 or something inch arms, but he's a really kind of prototypical man cover corner, good hips, good athleticism overall for his frame, willing to support the run, and really did his best work in man coverage with the Golden Bears. The Steelers predominantly now a man coverage scheme. Steven Nelson going in last year of his contract. Could he get an extension? I hope so. We'll see, but hasn't happened yet. Obviously, Joe Hayden very likely playing his final year with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then Justin Lane unfortunately has not looked too good through his first 2 years in the NFL. Now they do have a undrafted player this past year, James Pierre, who I think they like and has promise and could ascend. But Bynum, I think, could give yourself good insurance there on the outside, especially if you lose somebody like Cam Sutton in free agency. So Bynum, I think, is someone that sits for a year and then potentially has a bigger role in year number 2. Coming in round 6, number 189 overall, I have the Steelers taking Tommy Doyle, offensive tackle out of Miami, Ohio. Big dude at 6'8", 326. And again, waiting for a tackle here. And I'm not saying that's the right move to do, but I feel like tackle is going to be lower on their list of needs to maybe where I have it prioritized right now, and a lot of other needs for this team to address. And so they'll finally address tackle here in round number 6. Doyle honestly could go, I think, as high as sometime in the third round. I think will be one of these risers in the process, and he's gotten better every single season. If you look at his 2018 tape, wasn't too good, but 2020 he was excellent. He's versatile. Started his career at right tackle, then moved over to left tackle. Has been first team All MAC the last 2 years. Steelers, of course, love those MAC guys. He's a pretty good athlete for how big he is. He's strong. He's long. He creates great movement up front as a run blocker. He finishes his blocks. There's still some inconsistency in his game, still some rawness in his game. I think he's probably someone that has to kind of effectively redshirt for a season and just continue to get more refined in his technique. He's a bit of a waist bender because he is so tall, but I think he's a good stash player for a team that's looking for some options, at least in 2022. Because even if the Steelers want to roll with, say, Banner at left tackle and a core for at right tackle, both those guys, assuming Banner signs a 1-year deal, which he almost certainly will, both those guys will be free agents after 2022. A core 4 rookie deal will expire, and then Banner on a presumed 1 year contract. So you want to have an eye towards the future with this position as well. Finishing up the draft here, last two picks, round seven, number 210 overall, with a tight end going John Bates out of Boise State. Big dude, 6'5" and a half, 259. Classics, blocking type, inline blocker for the Steelers. Had a good week at the Senior Bowl. I think having that extra exposure for those guys is important. More eyes you can get in front of scouts because of this crazy season, the better your stock is going to be. A lot of good blocking tight ends in this draft. Doesn't always seem to work out that way. With a couple of different options. Luke Farrell at Ohio State is a possibility. Sean Byer from Iowa is another option as well. But I'm going Bates here in round number seven. Never going to be a number one tight end or a stud receiver, but just a classic inline blocker to pair maybe even as a number two next to Eric Ebron as early as the season. Because right now behind Ebron, there is a lot of unknown. Vance is retired. You got Kevin Rader, Zach Gentry, just not a lot of names there of guys that have a lot of experience on Sundays. Now Bates obviously wouldn't either, but I think he may enter if he gets drafted being the best blocking tight end on the roster. Although Raider did a pretty good job of that, and he is a good blocker. But Bates, that is his calling card, blocking. Doesn't create a lot of ceiling necessarily, but is a pretty high floor type of dude who should be able to help you out in the run game. And then finally, seventh round, number 219 overall, going with James Wiggins, the safety out of Cincinnati. Wiggins in 2018, a couple years ago, had 4 interceptions, a pretty impressive campaign towards ACL in 2019, but did come back for 2020. Could go a little bit higher than this, but for now, I have him slated as a late day three candidate. Safety depth overall for the Steelers, pretty thin, especially if Sean Davis walks. There is still likely to be Jordan Dangerfield circling back to the team in some form or fashion. Also, promising rookie 6th round pick, Antoine Brooks Jr. But safety depth can be added always on late day three. So that is my mock draft. I'll run through things one more time for you guys. At number 24, going Najee Harris, the running back out of Alabama. In the second round, Trey Hill, the center out of Georgia. Round three, Joe Tryon, the edge pass rusher from Washington. Round four, Mari Rogers, receiver out of Clemson, with a comp pick. In round number four, Cameron Bynum, the corner out of Cal. In round six, going offensive tackle with Tommy Doyle out of Miami, Ohio. Round seven, John Bates, a tight end from Boise State. And with the other 7th round pick, it is James Wiggins, the safety out of Cincinnati. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Your favorite pick in this mock, your least favorite. Do you like the idea of taking Najee Harris at 24? I think that is obviously very much up for debate right now. I try to lean towards what I think the Steelers will do more than what I personally would do. Information, of course, will be limited because of this crazy draft season. Hopefully, we'll have some more information, though, by the time we do our next mock draft. That'll be post free agency, being well in the pro days at this point. More information about who the Steelers are talking to, who they're meeting with, who they like. And so that'll hopefully make these mocks more accurate as we go forward. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.